In June of 2014, Israel begins a genocide of Palestinians. I had tried really hard to get this to end as well, kind of like how I prevented the attempted coup of Ukraine, which was still ongoing, essentially. You've got the Odesa Massacre that is also happening around this time, the month before in May of 2014. It took me about 2 or 3 months, but I finally got that conflict, Israel, to back off and stop annihilating defenseless, unarmed Palestinians. Unfortunately, 2,000 Palestinians died, but look, I did a better job on my own than all of these clowns on Twitter in the United States or elsewhere. Guys like Max Blumenthal or Ben Norton or Glenn Greenwald or Niko House. I mean, some of these people are simply YouTubers. That's it. Jackson, Hinkle, these are really just kids. Besides Glenn Greenwald, many of these millennials are really just out of their league. And these are the best of what independent journalism in the United States has to offer, unfortunately, these days. You've got a comedian on YouTube, Jimmy Dore. So you've got a guy in Japan or South Korea by the name of Ryan Dawson. This is the best that is available. And unfortunately, after the past few 8-9 months or so, I haven't even been following since I've been in India, but I'm sure over 45, probably something like 50,000 Palestinians are now dead. So a big reason for you guys to share this video is to help me end these conflicts that the CIA, with American corporate mainstream media outlets, to be specific, NBCUniversal and Time Warner, that is CNN, and HB0, have essentially resuscitated as I've been trying to come forward. In August of 2014, quite a bit is going on. I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff related to BLM and how BLM comes about with the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, Missouri, the complicity of Gyorgy Schwartz, otherwise known as George Soros, and Open Society Foundation, of course, the CIA, along with American corporate mainstream media outlets on the left. You guessed it, these very same media outlets, NBC, CNN, all were complicit in essentially weaponizing the anger of Black Americans against police officers, thereby diverting any sort of desire from Black Americans for Barack Obama to kind of do something for the sake of Black millennials, Black Gen Xers, and their futures. One thing that I want to mention is the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPoA, along with the Cuban thaw that follows the following month. I had understood for many years, going back to 9/11, that the CIA wanted to start World War III with 2 countries specifically, Iran and Russia. I had posted about this a lot of times in 2012, 2013. The Euromaidan protests, obviously initiated by the CIA in the United States under Barack Obama, was one way to create a conflict with Russia, start a color revolution, and eventually exacerbate that, turn that into an actual conflict with the US, using Ukraine as a proxy. So I wanted to kind of prevent all of that. I was able to put a stop to the whole Russia thing early on. And when it came to Iran, I understood that this kind of genocide of Palestinians at the time in 2014 was basically the desire of the United States government, to be specific, the CIA, to kind of draw Iran into a direct military conflict with the United States. So I had made a comment regarding Iran and Persia as I call it. If, Jews are really Semites, and if you've actually got dark skin, you are of Middle Eastern descent, then your grandparents are actually the Persians. So you have to be kind of a lunatic to want to wage war with your grandparents. And with that comment, the CIA kind of woke up and realized, what Sri is saying is true. What the hell are we doing? And so that became the start of the US approaching Iran and approaching other nation states to kind of get involved and mediate the situation as well and establish a nuclear arms deal, being able to establish an agreement with Iran where it would promise not to take its nuclear technology and use it for the creation of nuclear weapons. And in reciprocation, the United States would start lifting these economic sanctions that have been placed on Iran going back to 79 with the Islamic Revolution. So there is a long history between the US and Iran. I will talk about all of this stuff down the road. I will educate everyone about things like Operation Ajax and the CIA's successful attempt at overthrowing Iran's initial attempt at democracy. This occurs in 1953 due to the fact that their democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, wanted to nationalize their oil industry and take the profits and spend it on the Iranian people, on the Persian people, things like roads, schools, hospitals. So anyways, that started in August of 2014. I believe it was the following month that I had essentially done the same thing with Cuba, essentially knocked some sense into the CIA, and that became the start of the Cuban thaw that probably peaked in 2016, I believe it was, when Barack Obama visited Cuba as a sitting president, of course, at the time. And there was a baseball game between the Cuban national team and our Tampa Bay Rays. Baseball is a common sport between the two states, but also it is my personal favorite sport. So it became kind of a very appropriate way to promote, these new relations between the United States and Cuba on television. And so that was also because of me. Everyone out there needs to understand that the CIA hates Cuba and Iran. This is old news. Every American knows this. And for the CIA to do this in a 2-month span, initiate relations with Iran, followed by Cuba, Fidel Castro, this is unheard of. And the fact that it happens in such a short time span should give you an idea that I am indeed telling you the truth. So over the course of the past couple of years, there is this back and forth between myself and the wonderful folks of American corporate mainstream media, who altogether, including Fox News on the right, it is Fox News's job to support and maintain the Republican Party, while the rest of the corporate mainstream media outlets in the United States have an obligation to support and maintain the Democrat Party. I had to keep educating even those at CNBC about how the economy works, how the financial system works, how the Federal Reserve works, who started the Federal Reserve, what fractional reserve banking is, what fiat currencies are, why Bitcoin was going up. Bitcoin was something that I had learned about myself in 2011 by a wonderful guy by the name of Max Kaiser. He does great work. He knows his stuff. He is on RT, or at least at that time he was on RT, and that's how I discovered him. And he was the one that educated me on Bitcoin. Because I was also controlling Barack Obama's policies by way of the CIA, who is essentially the shadow government of the United States. Presidents don't have any power. It's the CIA that strategizes and draws up foreign policy. So I had essentially suggested, because Larry Fink and guys like Lloyd Blankfein, who at the time was chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs, have their own candidate in this upcoming election in 2016, that would begin the following year in 2015, in Hillary Clinton. I kind of wanted to have my own candidate. I wanted to have my own candidate to bring my anti-globalist ideas to the forefront, to the mainstream American population, who unfortunately are typically too intellectually lazy to want to even learn about how their country works or how the world works. But even beyond that, whether they are intellectually lazy or not, Americans are overworked and they have so many responsibilities, so many distractions available to them. You've got 4 major sports, you've got Hollywood, you've got television, all this garbage reality TV shows and just crappy movies, and in particular crappy music going back to the mid-90s. You've got Netflix, rising in those days. And so it's not easy for the average American, particularly if he's married and has kids, has a family. It's just not easy to keep up with the news and to even use the internet to your benefit, to look up books that will educate you on various matters. So I kind of wanted to have my own candidate to actually bring, the things I know and my wisdom to the forefront of American politics. Everybody knew that I was a third-party voter, and everyone had been trying to get me to vote Democrat and become a Democrat. And I absolutely refused for obvious reasons, because I just don't like either of the 2 major parties. So I basically gave a list of 10 requirements for this guy, for this candidate, and that began the search by the CIA, along with NBCUniversal and Time Warner, to begin looking for someone that could fulfill those 10 requirements. Unfortunately, I did not make one of the 10 requirements that he be intelligent, well-read, independent-minded, exhibit an eagerness to learn, to educate himself through his own means, as opposed to perhaps throwing on Fox News in the mornings, watching maybe 5 minutes about Iran, and proceeding to think that he is now a world-renowned expert on all matters pertaining to Persia. The individual that NBCUniversal, CNN, HBO, and the CIA found was Donald Trump. Now, I did not know what was going on at the time in the summer, fall, winter of 2014, going into 2015. But NBC and CNN, along with the CIA, had tried to convince Donald Trump to run as a Republican candidate. Donald Trump, his entire life, has been a liberal, a Democrat, financial supporter, donor to the party. Only recently at that time, he had donated to Kamala Harris's political aspirations in California. So these guys, knowing that Donald Trump is very good friends with Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, people like Oprah Winfrey, Hollywood executives as well, like Harvey Weinstein, etc., offered Donald Trump his own television network with NBCUniversal. At the time, Donald Trump had a reality TV show by the name of The Apprentice. Now, I don't watch television in general outside of sports, so I don't watch reality television. I don't even watch movies, really. I haven't since the late 80s, since I was a kid. I haven't watched The Apprentice ever, but I did know that Donald Trump had a reality TV show with NBC, and that Jeff Zucker, who at this time was running CNN, at that time, back in 2004, whenever this show started with Donald Trump, was the CEO of NBC at the time. So this was a very tight little circle of well-intentioned, highly patriotic Americans located in corporate mainstream media that had tried to convince Donald Trump to run as a controlled opposition candidate under the Republican Party ticket. He would proceed to clean out the Republican Party, win that primary through free publicity, promotion from the left, despite being a Republican, running as a Republican, and he would proceed to intentionally lose the general election in 2016 to Hillary, thereby giving Hillary the presidency. The reason why they came up with this strategy with the CIA was because I had said that nobody likes Barack Obama. From the very minute he stepped into office, pretty much 2 months in, I think in March of 2009, he had written up a new bailout package for Wall Street and corporate America and did absolutely nothing for the poor, for Black America, for those who were kicked out of their homes. At the time, I think he did something like give away free cell phones or something like that. I think these were called Obama phones. So it was, I knew at the time that all of these Black millennials and Gen Xers and, all these liberal white Americans that had voted for Barack Obama were immediately disappointed in him and had understood that he was essentially a con artist like every president, preceding him. Because of Barack Obama, I said that Hillary Clinton has absolutely zero chance of winning the presidency. And furthermore, nobody from the Democrat Party will win. It's going to be a Republican. I don't know who it'll be, but Democrats have no chance right now to extend these 8 years into 12, potentially 16 years. So because of that, they looked for Donald Trump, someone that was within their own kind of Democrat Party circle, and try to convince him to run. He rejected it. Donald Trump is someone who talks a lot, but doesn't really do anything. He had done this after 9/11 as well. What ends up happening is in April of 2015, the guy that I was going to vote for, even if he were not to be nominated, not to make it into the general election, I was going to write him in, was Rand Paul. When Rand Paul declared his candidacy, I had immediately said, I really would like my own candidate. Up until this point, basically Barack Obama was cooperating, was, following my guidelines for policies. The CIA, that is, was cooperating, passing off everything to the Barack Obama White House. I prevented World War III, or half of World War III, with Russia. In June of 2015, Donald Trump does his escalator thing, and he declares his candidacy. I was not being informed by anyone. Nobody came to the hotel, told me that he is my candidate. But I had followed him, I had listened, because CNBC was covering him heavily in what he was doing, despite running as a Republican. And he started kind of mouthing off and started making these politically incorrect comments about Mexican Americans. And it was that comment that gave it away. I think it was 3 weeks in, maybe the end of June. And I had realized, okay, I think this is the guy. After all, he has a reality TV show with NBC. Jeff Zucker is the guy that hired him. Jeff Zucker is now at CNN. What I had said to the CIA was, at this point, I knew, of course, that my iPhone 4 was hacked. In fact, there was an incident that happens in August of 2014 where I'm watching their early morning program, Squawk Box, and I had woken up a little earlier than usual, about 6 in the morning, and I had immediately thrown on CNBC, and I'm reading an article about a book called The Blood Telegram about how Heinz Kissinger, Dick Nixon, the president at the time, along with the CIA, were trying to incite yet another war with India. They were trying to encourage West Pakistan to attack East Pakistan, that is today's Bangladesh, in order to create a refugee crisis and draw India, led by Indira Gandhi at the time, into yet another war with Pakistan, basically. And so while I'm reading this article, everyone knows by now that I am a baseball fan and unfortunately a fan of the New York Yankees, the evil empire, and Joe Kernan, who is one of the anchors on Squawk Box on CNBC, had essentially made a comment about the Yankees. And I had blurted out, for some reason, I think because it was so early in the morning, and I'm reading this article, that the Yankees are not going to make it, unfortunately, into the playoffs, despite this being Derek Jeter's final year playing for the team, and really the end of his career. He's retiring after this. And Joe Kernan turns to the camera and asks, "But I thought you were a Yankees fan." And I looked over at the screen and I was like, what the F? You guys can hear me? And so that was the one incident that finally confirmed that not only was the iPhone 4 hacked by the CIA, that CNBC was given the feed into not only my MacBook Pro, but also this iPhone 4. So all this time going back to, I think, May of 2014, only a few months prior, just after the election and a little bit after I embarrassed Seema Modi and the rest of CNBC on live air, the CIA had decided to give CNBC, CNN, everyone, HBO, the feed into both devices. So they've been able to hear me. So any suggestion I give about, for Modi, by way of the CIA and the Barack Obama White House administration, encouraging, of course, my own government to reach out to Modi and kind of become friends with him and to establish economic relations, trade relations, this, that, all sorts of matters that I was discussing at the time, whether they were American matters, matters pertaining to India, or perhaps other nation states, such as this kind of attempted coup to start a conflict with Russia, a direct military conflict with Russia, getting Barack Obama out of Iraq, and at the same time, the CIA cooperating with me, but they're also clandestinely creating ISIS out of the rebels in Syria. So there is this kind of two-faced kind of thing going on. After all, I am dealing with the tribe. I think those of you who are American understand which tribe I'm talking about. And you've got to understand, more than half my friends in the New York City area, going back to high school, are Jewish. The friend that was hanging out with me the night when I met Kyle in 2010, he's Jewish, former Orthodox. He went to Yeshiva University in Manhattan. My girlfriend at the time in 2010, she's Persian Jewish. I broke up with her because of the surveillance and everything, and I wanted to protect her So I ended up breaking up with her in late 2010. I believe it was November of 2010. So it's not like like I'm an anti-Semite or whatever fancy word the ADL or whomever might want to come up with. I'm not a white supremacist, clearly. So I really cared a lot about the Black American population, the white American population, number 2, and number 3, the millennial generation at large in the United States. Those are the 3 primary demographics I really was trying to protect and trying to encourage the CIA and the Barack Obama White House to start helping. And I know the CIA controls everything in the United States, and I know they were on my devices, and I knew that I had essentially earned their respect through my knowledge of my history, of economics, of finance, etc., 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 you name it. What I had said to the CIA was, look, I'll get involved with this, but I need to clear my head. So I'm going to move out of the hotel. My dad had just bought a house for me to encourage me to get the hell out of the hotel, get married, start working again. So I'm going to go to India for a month with my mom and dad for the month of July, and I'll be back in August. And when I do come back, I will start telling Donald Trump what to do, what to say. And so I did just that. When I came back in August, however, I'm watching Donald Trump on television, primarily CNBC. CNBC is covering Donald Trump just for me. Just so I, because I don't watch TV. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch MSNBC. I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch CBS, ABC, etc., 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 because I'll vomit uncontrollably all over the place. So I'm sitting there watching CNBC, and I'm like, I'm not really feeling this. I just don't want to even get involved. I don't like Donald Trump. He's an idiot. So from August until January of 2016, the start of the next year, I would chirp maybe like 3, 4, 5 times and give a little bit of advice here and there to the CIA, to NBC, to essentially relay to Donald Trump. And he would say it, he would follow. After all, he's going to get a television network out of this, very much like Oprah Winfrey, bump up his net worth, another billion from this television network. And, Comcast, NBCUniversal, they're going to provide, financial support and everything for him so that the TV network survives and furthermore thrives. The idea for the television network would be that it would function as a competitor to Fox News. That was the original concept behind all of this. The guy that actually eventually convinced Donald Trump to run in June of 2015, leading up to it in April and May, was actually Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton was brought in to go speak to Donald Trump, just face to face. And it was him that finally convinced him to run. And that's where that escalator thing transpired and whatever. I, of course, am always kept out of the loop. I'm always treated as the donkey or something like that. So really just all this time, it's just my brains and everything that are being siphoned, kind of like in a parasitic kind of fashion, from, the wonderful people at CNN, CNBC, NBCUniversal, and even Wall Street. I'll get into all of this later. Down the road, not now. In January of 2016, I had this kind of epiphany while I was sleeping. I was half awake, half asleep, lying in bed. It was the 3rd week of January, and I just basically leaped out of bed. And I turned on my iPhone 4, and I basically said, okay, I'll get involved. Very reluctantly. I said to the CIA, give me 2 days. Monday morning, I'll be ready to go. That following Monday morning, I think it was the final week of January, perhaps, every day, 7 days a week. As many as 5 times a day, maybe even more, 6, 7 times, I just basically slinged one idea after another to the CIA, to CNBC, NBC, whatever, to essentially relay everything to Donald Trump. At the end of the day, I would say about 50% of what Donald Trump was saying on the campaign trail came directly from me. The other remaining 50% came from his campaign advisors, individuals like Steve Bannon, others. They kind of, held down that Republican perspective and stuff. So did I. I worked from that angle as well. Essentially, my anti-globalism was the most important thing. My anti-uber liberalism, as I used to call it. I call it really liberalism on steroids these days. So kind of like that LGBT, XYZ kind of stuff, and preserving the innocence of children. I talked about veterans, of course. The veterans that were serving in Afghanistan and Iraq were coming back, committing suicide. The whole 17 suicides a day or whatever, 22 suicides a day, that came directly from me. One after the next. I mean, it was probably more than 50%. I don't know. I don't care. What I do know is that without me, Donald Trump does not run for president as a Republican for the 2016 election. Without me, he does not win. He's got no chance whatsoever. So I will get into that election down the road because there's simply too much to say regarding that election. What ends up happening, of course, is Hillary ends up losing, Donald ends up winning. And when that happens in November 2016, on that Tuesday,